Welcome to CNU Talks, Beyond the Great Lawn. CNU Talks is a virtual learning program created by and for the CNU community. Many of your beloved faculty and fellow captains will share topics which elicit thought and compassion, stimulate intellect, and connect us in profound ways. Today, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Angela Spranger, Assistant Professor of Management in Christopher Newport's Luter School of Business. Dr. Spranger holds a bachelor's in psychology, master's in human resource development, an MBA, as well as a doctorate in organizational leadership. Publications of hers include several articles and book chapters, and in 2019, Dr. Spranger published Why People Stay, a book on organizational commitment and antisocial workplace behavior. Over the course of her 8 years at CNU, she has dedicated countless hours to supervising award-winning student research projects. Student accolades under her leadership include published work in a contemporary human resource management textbook, student presentations at Paideia, the Peninsula SHRM Conference, and the Global Conference on Women and Gender, as well as several international student presentations. Dr. Spranger serves as advisor to CNU's Society for Human Resource Management and has led study abroad opportunities across 6 European countries. She has been an instrumental leader of CNU's Collegiate Women's Network, an inclusive community for women dedicated to creating an atmosphere of diversity and empowerment. Just recently, Dr. Spranger has been named Christopher Newport's Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. She will work with all members of our university community to ensure that individuals feel safe, seen, and valued. We hope today that you'll enjoy, as much as we do, CNU Talks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Spranger, and I'd like to chat with you briefly about soft skills for hard times. I'm referring to the 5 C's of organizational behavior, and I'd like to just walk you through them in the limited time that we have. Now, I can only give like a very high level flyby visit with them, but I certainly welcome your comments, your feedback. Reach out if you would like to go deeper on any of these topics. So the 5 C's of organizational behavior are communication, collaboration, culture, change, and conflict. I get so excited about these, but I will start definitely with communication because it's the most important. Right now in the United States, we are facing tremendous obstacles to communication within organizations, between organizations, just in general. Wouldn't you agree? So some of those obstacles are poor listening skills, which we can rectify, right? Lack of trust, lack of interest, stereotyping, power dynamics, power plays, intimidation, when people can't or won't understand the other side. That's a choice to not show empathy. Inaccurate assumptions. There are so many beyond even this list. But what we can do is build on, increase our toolkit for effective communication. You can start with the SER model, sensing, evaluating, responding. That is sensing, just take in the message. Here's the biggest thing that we're facing, right? In our communications, we tend to often listen to respond, and we don't listen to understand. So using the SER model, sensing tells you the first stage is just to receive. Let your senses take in what the person is sharing or what the messenger is sharing. Keep in mind, communication is a process. It requires 2 participants, right? It's not communication if it's just one person delivering a message. It's only communication after the sender has encoded and delivered the message and the receiver has taken in the message, decoded it, and given feedback that they understand the message. So it's not communication until it's been confirmed. So you do the sensing, then evaluate what the person has said, then respond to it. And you can do those things, evaluating and responding, partially by providing effective nonverbal responses, right? Giving some good body language, some nods, and if you're having a hard time following, stopping the person and asking them to repeat, writing things down, and then Make sure that when you're communicating with someone, if you're the person who's trying to deliver a specific message, check yourself on time and place. Are you attempting to give performance feedback in a hallway where other people are moving around and, it's not private and it's like right before lunch? The other person's not going to be listening. Are you attempting to give, a meaningful, heartfelt congratulations or a personal message that might require some real thought on the part of the receiver in order to receive it effectively? And, you're outside on the walkway and there's lots of distractions. Things to think about, right? And here's a tip, pro tip. If you do need to give a serious message that requires significant emotional bandwidth, make sure that you are using a medium that fits that bandwidth. That is, the media richness of the tool that you're using to communicate the message matters. Sending someone a text message, and we're using so much more technology for our communications these days, right? Especially during these times of physical distancing. But it is so important to make sure that the tool you are using to convey the message will accommodate the emotional bandwidth that's needed. If you're trying to have a serious, important performance management conversation, it does need to be synchronous. It needs to be face-to-face if at all possible. So, these video chats, for example, are important. It should not be just a text message. It should not be just something dashed off. Email loses a lot in the communication process. So if you go back and forth, and these days, again, we're relying so much on technology, but I warn you, if you communicate a message through email, someone responds and you can tell they didn't quite understand what you meant, you may send one email back and say, no, here's what I meant, clarify. And then close that email with, please give me a call or let's set up a meeting to discuss if you're still unclear. What I'm suggesting is 2 emails. 2 texts, that's it. That's the max. If there's still a misunderstanding, take it offline. Take it to synchronous voice communication so that you can make sure all of the message is getting through. Too much on communication there. Let's move on to collaboration. Communication, collaboration. And why? Why is collaboration so important? Because that's what we're dependent upon, right? Especially in American companies, but in global companies all around the world. Every organization depends on effective teamwork. And team cohesion is how effective teamwork comes about. You have a group of people that are all working together that are tolerating one another, or an effective team, a cohesive team. How do you move from one to the other? Well, members of cohesive teams want to remain members. That's important. That's valuable, right? Because they are going to be more willing to share information with each other and with their supply chain, with their value stream. They are going to form a strong interpersonal bond. They're going to trust one another. They're going to make one another feel seen, safe, and valued. They're going to look out for each other. That's going to increase their organizational engagement. That's going to also lead to fewer incidents of negative organizational outcomes, which is a whole separate video. But suffice it to say, your safety ratings will go up. Fewer accidents happen when you have cohesive teams. Did you know that? There are going to be fewer mistakes. So your performance is going to increase when you have cohesive teams, right? Your productivity increases when you have cohesive teams. So it's very valuable to invest in team development. So the stages of team development, right quickly, because you probably remember these or have heard them somewhere else, is forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning or transforming. There are a few things that should happen at each stage, right? At the forming stage, there should be introductions, icebreakers, and a clear statement of purpose. Why are we here? At the storming stage, which you can intentionally manage, you can say, all right, we had our first meeting last week, that was forming. Let's go ahead and get together and move forward a little bit. You don't have to say have our storming meeting, but move forward a little bit. And then in that meeting, the agenda should include role definitions, ground rules, setting ground rules. And you can do that in the first meeting if you have time, but the first meeting should be about getting to know you. Who am I on a team with? Who's coming to the table? What are you bringing to the table? But then when you get to that next meeting, you should be talking about expectations, ground rules. Now, if you set ground rules, make sure you also set consequences that go with each ground rule, because otherwise, what's the point, right? Hold yourselves accountable, hold each other accountable. Ground rules, expectations, role definition is storming, and then the norming phase comes up, and that's where we have an usness. That's where we convert from a group to a team. Name your team. Why not? If it wasn't named for you already, you now have an identity. Celebrate that. You affirm your purpose, you affirm your process at that point, and you make it clear that you have specific behaviors and habits that make your team special and unique. Then, of course, you're at the performing phase, right? You're creating your deliverables, you're doing your output. You should also be doing process improvement. That is, at each stage where you do a thing, you should document how that thing could have been done better, because the next time around, you'll do it better. Finally, there's adjourning and transforming. And that's the stage at which, you get assigned, you get assigned the next project, or you're at the end, the last milestone for the current project. There should be a closure meeting. Don't just say, okay, well, we're all finished, and email each other congratulations. There should be a closure meeting. There should be a celebration, and there should be a documentation of lessons learned so that you can archive that or pass it along to the next team. 3, culture. Communication, collaboration, culture. These are the 5 C's of organizational behavior. They're soft skills in hard times. Culture has, for the sake of this video and for this moment, we'll talk about 3 clear layers. Some researchers have said 4, some have said 5. That's a theoretical argument that right now I just really want to focus on these 3 because it's the first one that we really need to be paying attention to right now. And that's artifacts. The artifacts of culture are how you manifest who you are. Your value statement, your website, your mission, vision, values, they may say some things about you. They're your espoused values, what you say about yourself, but your enacted values, how you live, how you behave, that's what's coming out. That's your walk that's showing up through the artifacts. The artifacts of culture are the above the waterline part of the iceberg. That's all that can be seen. So what I'm talking about is your website. You say on your Twitter feed, we are an inclusive organization. We support sustainable processes and products. But I can go on your website and see the opposite is true. Then you have some incongruence that needs to be corrected. You say one thing about who you are and how you want to behave. But when I come into your organization, I start working there, I see that what you reward is very different from what you said. Incongruence, right? We need to correct that. And that is actually one of the things that is very obvious to like new members or outsiders looking in. So it can be valuable to have somebody do sort of a cultural assessment and really check out if there is congruence between your values, what you say, and what you're manifesting. The artifacts of your culture will include the stories that get passed down from person to person, team to team, the legends that certain groups in your organization are known for, certain individuals are known for, the rituals, the day-to-day rituals of working in your organization. What time do people start? Is it an early morning organization and people get more esteem for showing up before the clock starts, before shift? Or is it an evening organization, or both? Or, is it more impactful if people are seen staying late or coming in early? Things like that matter, right? The language that you use. How do you refer to people? How do you refer to your customers? Are they clients? Are they partners? How do you refer to the people who work there? Are they associates, employees, hourlies, salarieds? How do you refer to people? That matters. That's artifacts of your culture. Language. And violations of cultural norms happen at this level. They happen at every level, but they definitely happen at this level, right? Like if there's a cultural norm of being polite to one another, we don't curse at one another, we call each other by our last names, but then suddenly, you call me by my first name, or you use profanity and, yell at me or something. That's a violation of a communication norm in an otherwise functional norm situation. So, artifacts of culture, they matter, the language. Your decor, you can see in my office, the decor says some things about the culture here. What does the decor say about your organization? Who's in the portraits on the wall? Or are they pictures of flowers? Or are they pictures of teams, people doing the work? What does your decor say about your organization? The next level down on culture is the shared values, and then the shared assumptions is the deepest level. Shared values are conscious and spoken value statements about what's good or bad, right or wrong. And so it's easier to know if you're violating one of those norms, right? Because the values are stated somewhere. But shared assumptions are not stated. They're unconscious. They're mental models. They're paradigms by which we operate. And so sometimes it's harder to learn those. And if you're fairly new in your organization, I will say and reiterate over and over again that it's very valuable to get a mentor. Get somebody in your corner who will help you translate some of the messages that get shared in your workplace so that you are clear on what the shared assumptions are. Have somebody that you can talk those things over with, because that's where oftentimes we can make some career limiting moves. So let's see, we can increase the adaptability of our organizational culture by doing some very specific things, but just remember, it's not about having a strong culture so much as it is about having an adaptable culture, a culture that is responsive to external cues and internal evolution. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about culture. Now, change. Communication, collaboration, culture, change, and conflict. We're on change now. And when we talk about change, the first thing I always like to point out is change initiatives fail fairly often. Some researchers, some writers have said 80% of the time organizational change initiatives fail. My hope is that that's not true. And there is some argument from there are a couple of authors that I found that said, no, that's not true. But still, some percentage of the time, change initiatives fail. Why? Because the strategy for change was not communicated at all, or there was no strategy, or it wasn't supported by top leadership, or there was no buy-in by the people who were going to be affected by the change. There are 3 potential responses to an organizational change initiative. There's resistance, compliance, and commitment. Obviously, we want commitment. How are we going to get there? Well, we have to make sure that we address the resistance factors. And let me say right here that it is normal to have resistance to change. It is normal. If you are a manager and you are suggesting a change, or the corporation has passed down a change and you're trying to facilitate that change with your people and they are just fighting and resisting it, it's not you. It's normal, okay? We all have the human instinct to resist change. Some of us, you may be hearing me going, no, I'm very comfortable with change. Great. I'm usually okay with some changes, but I'm just suggesting that it is normal and human to try to avoid direct costs, for example, right? You're taking something away from me in order to benefit somebody else. We're going through that right now in the United States, if you think about it. That's how some people are perceiving some suggested changes. You're trying to take something away from me, and that hurts me, and I'm not okay with it. So they fight. Or there's direct cost, there's saving face. You may have somebody who has been in your organization for 30 years. They've been learning and then doing and then teaching other people, and now they're an expert at whatever it is they do. And you come into the organization, you say, no, I think we should do it a different way. The suggestion that they're going to get at a deep level, on almost an unconscious level, is you're telling me I've been doing it wrong. You're telling me I'm stupid. No one wants to be made a fool of. So they're going to fight. They're going to resist that. And there are other reasons that we resist change, but those are the top 2. And I am telling you, we're seeing them in spades right now. I mean, just over, on top of each other. So be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with other people. Give them mercy. And figure out how to overcome the resistance. That is, there are some specific steps that we can follow to address change resistance. You start with communication. You can't over-communicate in a time of a change initiative. You can't. Telling people, giving people, that means being transparent. Now, that may be a challenge for people like leaders and executives who are in power and they have access to all of the information and they're going, no, I can't tell people this because if I do, then something bad will happen. I'm not suggesting that you reveal like personally identifiable health information or anything like that, but I am suggesting that to the extent that you can, be transparent and communicate the value of the change, communicate the need for the change. The change must be driven by legitimate, tangible, preferably external factors that demand that you make this change. And a favorite book of mine is Our Iceberg is Melting, or A Sense of Urgency by John Cotter. He's one of my favorite writers on organizational change. So definitely look up some of his work. But communication, doing workshops and training, involving your members in making the change. These things will all help you to overcome change resistance. And there are a few processes on formal change or change management, but we just don't have time for that here. So I'm going to go on to conflict, the fifth C: communication, collaboration, culture, change, and conflict. There are two kinds of conflict: constructive and relational, or socio-emotional. Task and socio-emotional. Task conflict is the good kind. Task conflict is the one that says, okay, there's a problem. We're going to put the problem on the table, and you and I are going to sit on the same side of the table and attack the problem. We're going to deal with the situation because I respect you as a person, or I respect you as an expert in your area, or at the very least, I accept you. You find something positive to say about the person and you deal with the problem. Relationship conflict is the bad kind. That's the one we want to avoid, and we really could do a better job of that right now in American culture. We really could. Social media is not helping us there. Relationship conflict is where we attack the person because of whatever the emergent issue was. And there's significant damage done psychologically and emotionally in conflicts like that. I mean, you may feel like you won, but did you really? You know? So anyway, some conflict can be good. It can be something that provides diversity of thought and leads to better decision making. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there and just invite you to keep in touch. I'm going to stop because I'm at my time, but I invite you to follow up on any of these topics: communication, collaboration, culture, change, and conflict. I have a curriculum for each. I have all kinds of resources for each. And if you need, just a little encouragement or some additional information, just do reach out. Angela.Spranger@cnu.edu. Love to hear from you, and I wish you all the best. Be